Hello and welcome to At the 55, your home for OUA football. Me and Tom are back on the mics, breaking down the Vanier Cup, the pinnacle of the USports season. Tom, we've come to the end of the road. We were there live and direct from Kingston, and we were treated to such a game. We're going to break that down. We're going to go over the USports major award winners and the first and second team All-Canadians, but not before I say, Tom, how the heck you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well, my man. You and I were having a conversation with our very good friend JT Suey at the Vanier Cup there, and he's asking us a few questions in that. And I was talking to him. He asked us, I believe it was something along the lines of like, do you feel like you should be here, or does this still feel a kind of a surreal moment? And I looked at him with like 10 minutes to go before the game started and said, my cheeks hurt because I've been smiling so much because I still can't believe that you and I are being recognized as this legit media company and watching this game and getting the best seats in the house for it. So it's just been so incredible. Thank you again to everybody who tunes in and listens to us. We would not be able to do what we do without you guys.
Amen. And it was great to be able to have that experience because we were treated to such a phenomenal game that I can't wait to break down. But it was really it's so rare with where U Sport football is at right now and OUA football to have that kind of, you know, like courtside at the Lakers equivalent feeling of like OUA football where you're there and it's like, yeah, there's Trey Ford and there's Tommy Dennison and then it's like it's a who's who and like the Queens coaching staff, they're all out there, and my guy Matt Snyder, head coach for the London Beefeaters, like he's making the trip there, hanging out with his brother Steve, head coach of the Queens. So it's just like, and yeah, JT's there and our guy Geezy, Aaron Giesler's there as well, the other head of Football Ontario. And it's just like it's super cool, like getting to see our guy Peter Bierce, like shout out to you, man, getting to see all those great Laurier fans that we've been able to meet over the year, and the families who've been so kind to us, and the parent group setting up the tailgate and even feeding us at the game, and just seeing as as we've both experienced in games, you in more high leverage games, and from being at that Vanier Cup last year, seeing that contingency of, in this case, Laval fans coming down there and just always reveling in what a fantastic job they do supporting their football team. And though we will go into the U Sport Major Award winners and All Canadians first, of course, though you all know it by now if you're tuning into our show, the Laval Rouge are the 2024 Vanier Cup champions, and well-deserved. And just, we'll go over the numbers. We've been talking about the historic numbers of what that club had been doing, and that it had only been the OUA teams to knock them off at that pinnacle, but it didn't happen on this one. But shout out to them. Huge, just what a year for them. Tom, anything else before we get into the award winners and the All Canadians?
Yeah, I think we should address super quickly here because we are typically a very positive podcast. We're trying to grow the game as best we can. And there were some antics that were happening before the game and some things that were going on and whatever else. A lot of people who watched the stream on CBC, it wasn't just on a stream, it was on live TV, which was very, very nice to see. But the folks who watched it there saw a little bit of an altercation that happened between Taylor Elgersma and Jordan Lassard from Laurier and Laval, respectively. And a lot of attention being paid to Taylor, and probably rightfully so, because he has a tendency to really talk and really do his thing and not very popular amongst a lot of people. But I just want to set the record straight here that, like, you can see Taylor has a tradition where he just walks around the stadium, just tries to get his mind right. And you can see Laval guys who are standing on his path while he's walking. And while, yes, he should have moved, Taylor should have moved, but Laval guys probably should have moved. I'm just saying, I'm not defending either one. I'm saying it's on both sides. This was a nail biter or a blood match at the very beginning of this. And unfortunately, it comes back down to the tension between English-speaking Canada and French-speaking Canada, which, fellas, can't we all just get along? The best football right now is being played in Quebec, and I want to be able to be welcomed out there as an English-speaking person. Can we just get along so I can watch some great football?
Yeah, well, and it was funny being at Richardson Stadium because obviously we think back to those matchups with Queens this year where you could really see that they had perfected the art of getting under Taylor Elgersma's skin.
Yeah.
Heck, Crichton Award winner Taylor Elgersma's skin. So it was kind of apropos seeing the tricolor so present in that stadium that was going on. At the end of the day, yeah, sounded like some bad blood. Obviously, we're at the final game. There's two teams left on the top of the mountain. Don't really know much of the details on that, but I'm certain that the players themselves involved in it aren't really all that much like perturbed by the situation. I have to imagine that whatever's being made of this, and I'm the one who's not online, so I don't know the full details of it. I'm guessing that, like, as you were highlighting, like, guys like Arnaud Desjardins and Elgersma train together, know each other well. These guys have that respect for one another. But appreciate you bringing that up. Worth mentioning it. Obviously, it made some level of newsworthiness, so it's worthy enough then of making our little production here. But let's get into those major award winners and those all Canadians, and we're gonna start with the award winners. And as I mentioned, though, of course, if you're tuning in, you know the storylines already. Your 2024 Heck Crichton Trophy Player of the Year goes to Taylor Elgersma from the Laurier Golden Hawks. The JP Metris Trophy Lineman of the Year goes to Giordano Vaccaro out of Manitoba. The President's Trophy Stand-Up Defensive Player of the Year is Nate Buchanan out of Calgary. The Peter Gorman Trophy Rookie of the Year is to Enrique James Leclerc out of Montreal. The Russ Jackson Award for kind of that overall, person who succeeded in athletics, academics, and community service goes to our guy and Riker Frank running the ball out of Saskatchewan. The Frank Tyndall Trophy, the Coach of the Year, goes to Michael Faulds. And yes, those are your major award winners. Tom, I said this to you beforehand, kind of just reading through the blurb about Coach Faulds. But I'll say it on this too, so there's other people to hold us accountable to remember it. He's currently sitting at 53 wins in his regular season coaching career. So let's just make sure to pop a bottle of something when he picks up his second win next year with Laurier in the regular season. Maybe we can be there. Maybe we could dump the Gatorade cooler on him. Maybe that's
just me and you, nobody else.
Yeah, they go like 2-0 in the season, beating like York. We dump a Gatorade cooler. That's your 50. We'll bake him a cake. Who knows? Look at him some pillows. Those are your major award winners. Before we dive into the all Canadians, what are your thoughts on this list?
Well, great to see some representation from the OUA. Obviously, Taylor Elgersma winning the Heck Crichton. I think that was a pretty surefire thing that we were thinking going into this. Coach Faulds winning the Coach of the Year as well. Outstanding job by the two of them. But really, the thing that gets me fired up even more than that, once again, if you forgot, we're a couple of O linemen, is the JP Metris Award winner is an O frickin' lineman out of the University of Manitoba. It was awesome to see some O linemen getting some love there. But no, they're just outstanding winners. Actually, three of the major award winners from the Can West, which is, I guess, they got to come from somewhere, and there's only 4 conferences out there, but just something to note.
Yeah, one of them, of course, being the President's Trophy Award winner, Nate Buchanan out of Calgary. And just reading through the blurb about him, led Can West this season with 4 interceptions, twice as many of the next closest, and tied for second most in the country, and took 2 of those back to the house, setting a single season program record with 167 interception return yards. Obviously, I watch more OUA football than I do Can West football, and because Calgary wasn't in the playoffs, I didn't watch any Dino football this year, if I'm being frank about it. Oh, would I have loved to see our guy Jackson Finley win that one. That would have been a cool one to see. No doubt this young man, Buchanan, is an absolute star doing his thing for the Dinos. I might also have a bias against the Calgary Dinos, but we don't need to go into that one there. Let's go into some all-Canadian winners. I'll read through the first and second team, and then we can give you our thoughts. I kind of wish I saved looking at this list for live when we recorded, because it was fun. And, of course, for the non-OUA players whose names I'm less familiar with, I apologize in advance if I stumble on any names. First team All-Canadians offense, quarterback, Taylor Elgersma, Laurier, running backs, Lucas Berthet-Dembel out of Montreal, and Braden Stubbs out of Manitoba. Receivers, Olivier Cool, Laval, Ethan Jordan, Laurier, Seth Robertson, Western, Daniel Weeb, Saskatchewan. Utility player, Emir Boutin out of Laval. The offensive line at center, Anthony Horth, Sherbrooke. Guards, Giordano Vaccaro, your JP Metris Award winner, Vaccaro out of Manitoba, along with Alcin Diouf out of Montreal. Your tackles are Eric Flippin' Anderson from the Western Mustangs and Sean Rowe out of Manitoba. Tom, I had to like ease back doing my inner Laurier roll call there and dropping an actual F bomb saying Eric Anderson's name there. I got excited. Your first team All Canadian defense. Your defensive tackles are Christopher Fontenard out of Montreal and Darian Newell out of Queens. At defensive end, Jeremiah Ojo out of Montreal and Liam Reed out of Calgary. Your linebackers are Justin Cloutier out of Laval, Justin Pace out of Queens, your
That's my guy.
and Seth Hundeby out of Saskatchewan. At safety is Nate Buchanan out of Calgary, of course, being your President's Trophy Award winner. Your halfbacks are Mendel Joseph out of Concordia and Robert Bobby Springs Springer out of the Windsor program. At cornerback are Jordan Lassard out of Laval and Gerald Cummings from UBC. On special teams, Michael Horvath picking up the punting award out of McMaster. Place kicker goes to Ben Hadley from St. FX. Tayshawn Electric Jackson picks up the first team returner out of Laurier, and the rush cover goes to Ndeki Garant Dumabila out of Laval. To the second team, All Canadians, quick, fast. Your offense quarterback is Arnaud Desjardins at Laval. Your running backs are Jared Kasari out of the Queens Golden Gales and our guy, Riker Frank out of Saskatchewan, Russ Jackson Award winner, Riker Frank, that is. At receivers, we have Darius Samuels from McGill, Henrique James Leclerc out of Montreal, Rookie of the Year and second team All Canadian. Good job by that young man there. Kasim Ferdinand from the Carleton Ravens and Samuel Davenport out of UBC. The utility player goes to Sebastian Parcelidis out of Laurier. Shout out to you, Big 41. Oh, he's from Toronto. I didn't know you were from Toronto, Sebastian Parcelidis. Okay, we need to talk. The second team All-Canadian offensive line is Alex Berwick from Western at center. Your guards are Josh Wrightfield from Laurier and Mitcher Schlesinger from Guelph. At tackles, it's Alexandre Levac from Montreal and Domenico Piazza from McGill. The second team All-Canadian defense is Colin Connelson out of Manitoba and Brandon James Poulin-Marc from Bishops. The defensive ends, it is an OUA duo of Kaladi Amusan from Windsor and Ife Onyeka from Carleton. Your second team All-Canadian linebackers are Harold Missan out of Montreal, last year's President's Award winning Harold Missan. Anthony Moore Tuzo out of Guelph. No doubt that Sam position, and Mitchell Townsend out of UBC. Your defensive secondary is Elijah Crame from Montreal, Jackson Sombach from Regina, and Mac Bannatyne out of Alberta at the halves. And your corners, another OUA duo in Richard Adubafor from Western and Istvan Asibodatsi from Windsor. Your special teams on the second team All-Canadians are Eric Maximuk from Concordia, Philip Boyer from Montreal, Alex Ziang from Alberta, and Chase Henning from UBC, that being the punter, place kicker, returner, and rush cover in respect. Those are your first and second team All-Canadians. Tom, take it away.
Well, first and foremost, before we get into anything else, I think my absolute favorite part about this is that they list a lot of the academic focuses that a lot of these guys have. And for Alex Berwick at Western, it just says King's College. I just love that so much. But going through this list, obviously the best of the best that USports has to offer here. To start with the first team guys and kind of going through, obviously we talked about Taylor Elgersma a little bit. Braden Stubbs has been fantastic for Manitoba, setting records for them in touchdowns, rushing, obviously behind a fantastic offensive line. We mentioned a couple of them as All-Canadians as well, but just an outstanding individual season. Obviously, Olivier Cool, Ethan Jordan, Seth Robertson. For the folks who listen to us regularly, you don't need to hear us talk about Seth Robertson or Ethan Jordan all that much, but Daniel Weeb has been outstanding. He was somebody that I had a chance to speak to at the East-West Bowl as of last year. Came into this one, obviously, as a first-team All-Canadian, and has really been a stalwart target for Anton Amarud on the Saskatchewan offense this entire year. So complete shout out to him for sure. Love seeing our guy Eric Anderson get the nod again as a first team All-Canadian.
Let's go 6-1.
Definitely. And Darian Newell. Awesome to see that. Awesome to see that directly behind him. He's got Justin Pace. Oh, I'm just so happy for a lot of these guys on here. Just some initial takes that I had for the first teamers.
Yeah, like love seeing that Newell pick in there. And you and I just started talking about some of those great interior guys that we had to battle with. and I guess he's the three tech we were saying
Mhm.
next to our big guy from Montreal. I'm forgetting his name there,
Christopher
but
Fontenot.
yeah. But to think like, man, he can hold it down in the one, he can be it, and we're kind of saying reminds
Mhm.
us looking at those tricolors of oh Tom, we literally just talking about him, and now the name's escaping
Derek
me.
Wigan.
Derek Wigan, thank you. Another great Toronto football player as well, of just a guy that could just patrol to every position there in the middle. They've had some great defensive tackles and defensive linemen in general. You know, and yeah, to your guy, Justin Pace. Tom, it's funny, like us reading it through together beforehand, you obviously saw my biggest reaction, but the thing that's really catching me now going through it, and I'm gonna double check here as we go through. Jackson Finley's not an all Canadian. Which here's what I don't get. And again, I'm not trying to take a shot at this kid from Montreal in Elijah Crame. Um, oh, he's from Paris, France. That's interesting. But my whole, again, this doesn't have to be a perfect science because obviously when we look at the Heck Crichton nominees, since there's only two quarterback positions on the All Canadians and all our Heck Crichton nominees, aka the league MVPs, are quarterbacks. You have two of them in Tuchinski and in Quirion not making all Canadians. And we kind of accept that. We get it. It's kind of the same way how Evan Hillock wasn't a OUA All Star this year, but put that aside. But so what I don't get though is the thought that, like, for Defensive Player of the Year candidates, right? It goes to our guy from Calgary here, who's the first team safety. Shout out to you again, Nate Beauchemin. Great numbers.
Mhm.
The RCQ President's Trophy winner is Mendel Joseph out of Concordia, um, who's a, like, halfback. It seems listed here on the first team. Makes all sense in the world. And so I'm just thinking to myself, like, for Crame to be the safety over the, I don't know. It bugs me a bit. It bugs me a bit, Tom. I don't know. You obviously watch a lot more Montreal football than I do. Like, give me the quick and dirty on Creme that makes me like come down a little bit from feeling like Finley got robbed here.
No, Creme has been a stalwart on that defense. And once again, if you can showcase that you are an outstanding defensive player on the Montreal defense that is filled with outstanding defensive players, you've got a pretty good shot to win some other major awards or be a part of a list like all Canadians here. I was surprised not to see our guy in Jackson Finley for sure, but when you look at this list and when you look at some of these guys, I don't actually hate it, because like I said, Cormier has been fantastic in that safety position for Montreal. I mean, there was a Montreal defense that was top five in every category across the regular season. It,
Yeah.
it's tough. I mean, it's tough to take the bias out of it because Jackson Finley is our dude, and we just love to see that guy ball out. Me in particular, but I don't hate the pick.
No, that's fair. Man, every time I see Tayshaun Jackson's name, I just see Windsor, Ontario. I just think to myself, "Oh my God, how did you guys let this guy
Oh.
out of your hands?" Tom, the main thing though that caught our attention, I feel so bad because this is 2 years in a row that, like, from this very list, it makes us kind of stop and wonder a little bit. Man, when Kasim Fernand hangs him up, his resume is going to be supreme. He's
Mm-hmm.
a second team All Canadian now for 2 years running,
Mm-hmm.
and his numbers are good. But you know what? It's crazy because there's a case you can make a case that Tristan Reddy maybe outperformed. He doesn't have the touchdowns. And you know what? It's still like Kasim is obviously the guy there. But you think about guys out of the OUA alone. I know you were bringing up like your guy Raiden Thorne's name. I was mentioning like a couple of those guys out of Guelph, like maybe a Willem Arsenault makes that pick there, gets that pick there. Trying to think who else that could be. Like, again, like, by the numbers and by Carleton being like just an immensely pass heavy team, it makes sense for them to have representation up there. I just maybe it's one of those things where you start to play in with the team success for the individual success, where it just feels like, if we're seeing Carlton a few more of these like high leverage playoff games, it's kind of validating that versus just being like, cool, you guys throw the ball a ton, but like, hey, great, you won the Panda this year. Good job by you, right? You played a big role in that. So maybe I'm doing that thing where I'm projecting relative lack of team success, though I love where the Carleton Ravens are at. Give me some, inject Carleton Raven football in my veins. Maybe I'm projecting that a little bit. What'd you make of seeing Kasim on this list for 2 years running now?
Well, first and foremost, Carlton did not win the Panda game this year.
Shoot, my bad. I'm so sold on Elijah Barnes football, man.
Yeah, and I had a little unbelievable statistic for you that I just saw today. It's not going to show up really on any of these pages that we're looking at here. Elijah Barnes, as of I think either as of recording or just the other day, just turned 20 years old, which means he did that entire season as a 19-year-old.
Tom, we need to print T-shirts. We need to buy all the Elijah Barnes. Call your stockbroker right now. Like we're
Hey, we gotta wait. He's gotta wait for a second. We're talking about small Canadians here. Um, but this year, you and I had a lot of things to say last year talking about Kasim Ferdinand and in this list. I don't actually mind it going into this year because of everything that we were talking. I really made sure to pay the most amount of attention I possibly could to Kasim Ferdinand this year. And while he does have great numbers in the regular season, 42 catches, 645 yards, and 6 touchdowns, what really drew my eye is how much he commands defenses to account for him. You know, you've got your guys in Tristan Reddy, Frederick Hatchie, and all of the rest of those receivers who are outstanding, don't get me wrong, but they're able to get a little bit more open because every team is saying Kasim Ferdinand is the guy to watch. I don't think I ever saw him without at least two guys on him. If not, it's a high safety, but the safety's got eyes on Kasim the whole way. So I don't actually mind this because of how much he garners from that defense and then still being able to put up over 640 yards of receiving in an 8-game season. So I don't mind it this go around.
Yeah, no, you're right. He's awesome. He's great. And I think the point about why, Tristan probably got some more of those yards being a product of that, like Tristan Reddy, I think that stands up. It's just, hey, like, let's go, Carlton. Like, win a Panda game. What the heck, man? I picked you guys. Like, come on. I picked you against my Ottawa Gigi's. What the hell, man?
Yeah.
Like I said, win a Panda game.
Yeah. Yeah. So awesome to see that. Again, I can't help but laugh seeing Mr. Berwick's name in King's College. That's just hilarious to me. But obviously very well deserved. Alex Berwick has been a stalwart on that Western offensive line that is typically one of the best in the nation year after year. So getting a call out like that is great. Love to see Josh Rietveldt and Mitchell Stretchinger, two other guards from, obviously one from Laurier and one from Guelph in this one as well, which was great to see.
Let me ask you then real quick, talking about Stretchinger, if I were to tell you that there was going to be one All-Canadian from that Guelph O-line, and again, obviously, you have to compare versus who they're going up against.
Yep.
Would he have been like? Would you have said like put some money on? Again, me saying a couple of months ago, one guy will get all Canadian.
If you told me there was only going to be one offensive lineman from the Guelph Griffins to get an All-Canadian, I would not have thought it was Mitchell Stretchinger. Not to say that he didn't play outstanding, because he absolutely did. My eye was just drawn a little bit more to guys like Ethan Pyle or even Spencer Masterson, who was asked to make the switch from tackle to guard and did a pretty damn good job of that as well. So he was not my first pick, but it's a great pick. It's not a wrong pick. It's just not who I was expecting.
Only in his third year. Gotta love that. Yeah.
Gotta love that.
Yeah. Tom, it's always a pleasure getting to look at these lists and seeing Kaladi and Ife on that second team. Just, you know what? I'm not even mad that neither of them are first teamers. They deserve to be together. Those two dominant players holding it down at either end of the 401 in this beautiful conference we have right here. Tom, that's all I got for this. I mean, maybe, again, I don't know much about some of these guys coming from the other divisions, but Pat Cumberbatch, we couldn't have got him on the list for 2 years running now. Come on now. Like, let's make a little space for him. Get I know your guy, Sombach. Mac Bannatyne, I'm going to throw this out there. I know I brought it up to you. I'm trying to remember. I think it was Ballin. Never mind. That's Ballantine, not Bannatyne. Never mind. All right, Tom, I'm ready to move on from this one. Any last words for you about the All-Canadians?
Yeah, just a couple of last things. Love the defensive players from out west that got on this. I didn't mention it in the first teamers that came around because I was too focused on my guy and Justin Pace at linebacker. But Seth Hundeby out of Saskatchewan might be one of the best linebackers that I think I've seen. His ability to read, keep up with receivers, especially in crossing routes, and the way that that man hits. He is one of the hardest hitting dudes I've seen at linebacker in a long time. He is somebody that I love to watch anytime I get a chance to watch some good old fashioned Can West football. But to go back to the second team defense as well, obviously calling out Jackson Sumbach from Regina, but love to see Richard Adu before and this Devontae Dotsie on this second team list. I have to imagine that Richard Adu before was he raised the opinions of these some of these CFL scouts after this year because of his versatility of not only starting at corner but then switching into halfback. And sure enough, we just saw on his Instagram a little while ago he has signed with the Saskatchewan Roughriders.
Let's
So
go.
he will be at training camp at bare minimum here. So awesome to see, but especially Esteban Asibo-Dotsi. I mean, you and I have been seeing what the fantastic work that he was doing last year as well as this year, but to get that kind of recognition there is awesome to see for our guy.
Most definitely. Also, shout out to Eric Anderson, also
Also,
studying
shout out to
King,
Eric Anderson.
King's College. Love that. Well, those are your first and second team All Canadians. Let us know what your thoughts are on that. But we'll keep talking All Canadians because they were certainly represented in this year's Vanier Cup, live from Kingston, Ontario. Final score in this game: the Val Rouge et Or 22, Les Lauriers Golden Hawk 17, 22-17. Tom, we talked about the kind of two superpowers of these teams. I think we corrected ourselves in saying realistically, both these teams are supremely well-rounded teams. But if you were going to do kind of, your fire and ice superpowers, what do both these teams do so well that's gotten them to here on top of being well-rounded? It is ultra-powered offense for the Laurier Golden Hawks versus stingy hard-nosed defense by the Laval Rouge. Or you had highlighted so nicely how that strength for Laval really was in the front seven. And we had been talking all year, but as Laval kept, taking bodies through the OUA, saying that more and more they seem to be the dominant team in the trenches, especially on the offensive line side of things. As we got into the second half of this game, talking to a lot of folks who are just, kind of just as you do at a game, what do you think's going on? And there's a lot to talk about in this one, but it's hard to get past the fact that Laval dominated the trenches on this day.
They really did. Their guys came out to play in this one, and not just from a standpoint of, you have your four guys against their five guys, and oh my gosh, whatever. There was obviously some things that the Laurier, specifically that Laurier offensive line, did great. And a lot of the pass coverage and a lot of the things that they were doing there, for the most part, was relatively clean. But every single run play that I had a chance to watch, and you and I are in the end zone for this, so we can really see one of the best views here. But I did go back to rewatch the game as well. I don't think you see any movement off of that D line. And that's not to say that Laurier's O line is bad. You and I have been talking about how good they are this entire year, but there was just no movement there. These guys were just monsters in the middle. Thomas Gosselin, I believe Mark Lee or Deshaun called this out, and shout out to the two of them. They did a great job calling this game as well. But Thomas Gosselin, their big one tech for Laval, is a first-year player. And the things that he was able to do to that interior of the Laurier offensive line was nothing short of amazing. And you start to look at how were they able to create some pressure here. And one of the things that Laval is the best at, we talked to Coach Scotto after the game, albeit obviously very upset, is that these guys twist like some of the best in the industry. Their ability to pin an offensive lineman to have somebody else loop around and come almost free is where a lot of this ability really came from here. There was a couple of times that I saw as well, not to make this completely about O and D line, but that's where
No,
everything
let's
is
do it.
won. Yeah, let's do it. You know what? Let's do it. Um, but there was a couple of times where you saw guys, even a guy like a Cooper Hamilton, he's trying to jump set against some of those Laval defensive ends, and they are so damn fast. It's not what you want to be doing, and it obviously gives them the edge to try to get around and get to Taylor. But he Taylor got uh he had more pressure in his face than I think he's had all season, potentially his entire career at Laurier. Laval really got home to him a fair few times.
Well, they got home 5 times, but if you watch this game, and again, if you're listening to this, I'm assuming you watch this game, that feels like a typo. Like
Yeah.
he got hit more than 5, and he was under pressure certainly more than 5. And just keeping it on the like nerdy O line stuff. Again, one of the thing too when you're talking about Laurier not getting what you call like vertical displacement. You know, sometimes you talk about with certain
Mhm.
plays, your goal is to seal a player using, you know, like a down block technique or with your gap schemes when you kick a guy out and you don't necessarily need to move him, but your job is put yourself between him and the ball carrier. And, you know, you have the advantage of knowing where the ball is going. More in those zone concepts, you want to create leverage getting guys pushed downfield using things like double teams. And it felt like, and we were talking about it as we were watching it, where it's like, okay, like with the way they're doing a lot of these stunts where players are slanting in the gaps instead of more traditionally like engaging, maintaining gap leverage, reading the ball and making their play, they're much like how on the O line, when you run a gap scheme, it's like you're going to this gap. You're not making a read. You're running at this dude and just like, you know, you're not really making a read. Just run right into him, collide. It sometimes can screw up or make those zone doubles a little bit trickier because you're passing a guy off. You're not getting as square on a dude, being able to do a proper double team. So I feel like that's perhaps sometimes where they had kind of stymied some of that. But on top of it, as we were seeing, they're using these 40 fronts where to kind of use a bit more of the parlance, they're kind of cowboying it over where the one tech is going head up on the nose. So it's kind of like, and then they bring the linebacker down. So it's kind of like a 50, but these linebackers, like, you know, that's often a good matchup for your O line. If you can say, okay, we're big on big or what have you, and that's a matchup you want. These linebackers are strong, holding it down in the gap where they can give you a pop, like going up against just in our time, your Nick Shorthills and your John Rushes, who, you know, they aren't just going to like let you block them. But then again, they're looping, they're stunting. And it just looked like I feel like I had anxiety watching that because I've certainly been in games where I'm on an O line and having those struggles where you just know it's just it feels like you're firing off maybe a bit slower because you're trying to make those adjustments and you're not dominating the way that perhaps you're used to. um Great job up front by that Laval defense, but you know we were talking about it pre-game where, and we'd even got to kind of talk about with Coach Galley, where you know as you were highlighting a Laval defense that likes to play man, go zero, bring pressure, and just know that they'll get home or they can lock you up. And we're just thinking, like, are you really going to do that against this Laurier team? And man, take a bow, Laval, because there's times where you're thinking if they're not getting home, you know, these receivers are getting open. And there was a couple unfortunate drops, and you know, we'll go over the numbers briefly, but just you know, talk about stones and boulders to be able to say we're going up against the best passing attack that the league has to offer. And you were kind of mentioning that maybe these Glenn Constantine defenses have faced. We're not going to blink. We're going to do what we do and just man you the f up.
Yeah, and when you talk about phenomenal defensive coordinating here, I mean that you have to look at this game to really get a sense of, yeah, Coach Constantine, and forgive me, I've been trying to look it up here, but I can't seem to find the Laval defensive coordinator to call him out as well. But my goodness, they are playing phenomenal defense, and the schemes are there. Once again, uh, it's very gratifying as a reporter to be able to call out something and to see it happen live and say, "Hey, see, I told you so. I know something." But the very first sack, the big sack that I believe number 21, Deki Garant Dumambila, hope I got that right, came off the edge. Oh, sorry, lined up as if he was going to blitz, Ball gets snapped. Everybody gets going. Justin Cloutier, I believe, is the one who actually blitzes, and that's who Tanner Nelms tries to pick up by cutting him and doesn't really cut him all that well. So he's kind of lined up behind Taylor as he tries to step up. And Garen Dumambila blitzes the gap on a delayed blitz and has a free shot and crushes Taylor for one of the first sacks of the game. And that's exactly what we were talking about previously. It's how they got my McMaster team so well, and especially in that 2012 year by those delayed blitzes where everybody seems to have a guy, and then the sixth guy comes and he's always going to be free, but now nobody's picking him up because everybody else is really preoccupied here, and that's where that first really big hit comes from to get that going. But once again, to go back to what you're saying as well, we're seeing guys and they're doing a zone run game and they're trying to get things going with either Nelms or with Jackson in the back end, and these offensive linemen are staying on the double teams trying to get any kind of movement, and they're not, which then allows these linebackers, which are phenomenal, to scrape right across and come into the hole and to meet these running backs here, because guys are too late getting off because they're just trying to get movement at the first level. So that defensive line, if nothing else, ultimate run stoppers there. I mean, Tayshaun Jackson was still able to go off a little bit here, but the majority of his yardage, the 7 carries for
That
87
draw.
yards, a big piece of that is that 51-yard draw that he ripped off.
Yeah.
Now, he did
Yeah.
have another somewhat successful, I think it was a counter tray, which once again, in that kind of a setting, you're stepping to a gap. It's not a man scheme. So when you're down blocking away, even if guys are twisting or stunting or blitzing, it's just whoever's in your gap, you go and you block. And that's what happened. And Tayshaun Jackson, with his abilities, was able to get around the horn. But even that, I think it was only for an 8 or 9 yard gain. So even with those two big plays, he has 5 others that barely do anything because this is such a fantastic defense, especially in the run game.
Yeah, and we were talking about maybe those gap schemes being the way you get to there, because it's one of those things where the way Laval plays defensively, if you run an offense, a run gap scheme, and if you guess right and you're down blocking right where those guys are slanting away, and you get a good puller, picking up the back or whomever's looping around, you can break off a major run. But as you were highlighting, those plays also just take a bit longer to develop, getting those guards to the point of attack. And as you said, those linebackers were scraping and filling so quickly that it made it so tough. Yes, Tayshaun ends up with 87 on 7 carries. The day, just going over some of the numbers, Elgersma goes 23 for 34, 246, and 2 touchdowns. And, outdueled by Arnaud Desjardins on this day. Well, I mean, it's up for grabs, I guess, if you're the outduel piece. Arnaud certainly looked a bit more comfortable at times, but if only because he had to have been more comfortable, because he also had some pretty nice pockets around him, but goes 34 for 42, 320 in the air, no touchdowns. He is your Vanier Cup MVP, which shout out to him. Good job by you. But you have to look at the contributions. I mean, obviously on this game, it's we talk about this Laval defense. I mean, Laurier's defense, it was very much the bend but don't break, because Arnaud was methodically driving it downfield, and then they would just hold him shut, and the scoring was all on the foot of one Philippe Forteza. 18 points on the game. You add in 2 safeties given up by Laurier, and that's how you get to your 22. But so Forteza with a great game kicking it, where we went into this being like, by the numbers, Laval is like, it ain't looking too pretty. Dawson Hodge, on the other hand, just 1 for 2. A bad miss that was in his range, but I mean, yeah, what are you going to do? But then as well, looking at Mathieu Roy, who we saw this coming out of the Mitchell Bowl, where he not only gets the 19 carries, but then reels in 13 receptions, all purpose in the rush in the air. He's putting up 156, but that's where it felt like, and being able to use a guy like Roy, and I'll leave it to you to talk about the way Laval was kind of picking on Laurier's defense to get the ball downfield, but being able to use a guy like him where they just kind of would just chunk it down the field and just picking up first downs. And it bears out majorly when you look at the time of possession as well, where it's 36-35 for Laval, 23-25 for Laurier. They were just leaning on Laurier. And frankly, like, there is the part of me that looks at this game, looks at Laurier on the day and says, man, like, Laval pressed you for sure. I don't want to take it away from Laval, but you made some bad mistakes in this one, and you only lost by that small a margin. Like, golly. But yeah, for Laval, for that offense, seeing what Guo was doing, seeing what Desjardins was doing, just being able to chunk it down the field, pick up first downs, and just lean on Laurier. Again, it's somewhat impressive to say that Laurier didn't sort of falter more in the wake of that.
Yeah, this game plan going into this really showcases once again. I talked about it initially, and I don't want to keep pumping my own tires, but I do know something about what I'm talking about. When you walk into this game and you start seeing, hey, Laval's doing a hurry up style offense that they haven't done all year. Nobody has seen this before because Laurier and that defense with Coach Ron Van Werkerk loves to sub in three or four guys of if it's an obvious passing down or run a first down or whatever the case. So to get them out of that, here's a hurry up offense. And in this, I mean, they were picking on Malik Cote pretty heavy here, and you and I are going, oh wow, like it really seems that they're going after this. After rewatching this, what I think is really going on is that Arnaud Desjardins is just taking what the Laurier defense is giving him. For the majority, especially in that first half, Laurier to the boundaries in a lot of hold coverage, which means the halfback is down and the corner is back in this zone coverage that they have here. So with quick hooks and quick slants, that's all Arnaud was really doing. It's just finding his guy out there and ripping it over and constantly doing this. I think he did it for the majority of the first half at bare minimum. It was like a 70 to 30 split boundary to field. And you and I were talking about this. What we thought was happening is that obviously on the strong side of the field, you have Olivier Cool, who's one of the best receivers in the country. And you've got Harnour Dhaliwal, there's your Laurier safety, who's if he's going to drift anywhere, he's drifting to that strong side to really make sure that everybody has coverage over any over the top plays, especially to a guy in Olivier Cool. So by constantly going to the weak side and taking these quick routes, while yes, it may seem like he's picking on Malik Cote, in my mind, what I'm seeing here is I'm seeing them really try to focus on getting Harnour to come over to say, hey, everything that really is like a two-man game on the boundary side, if they take a shot or something, I got to be ready. So I'm going to start drifting here. And just a few steps in either direction mean that Olivier Cool's got one-on-one coverage and Arnaud Desjardins taking that every time he possibly can. But to this Laurier defense's credit, they really limited big plays. Yes, Laval was able to move the ball down the field a number of times, but it was very much a bend but don't break kind of defense. Anytime that there was a long bomb or a big throw, chances are it was either incomplete or was tackled immediately. Like this Laurier defense really kept everything in front of them and played some fantastic football, obviously not allowing a single touchdown on the day. Do that for you. But once again, going back into my point of, I think he's just taking what they're giving him. A lot of those passes that he's completing are just short passes, but Arnaud Desjardins, like you mentioned, he goes 34 for 42. His first 22 passes are completions. He's 22 for 22. He doesn't throw an incompletion until almost, I think it was like a 2 minutes left in the first half. And once again, he's finding his guys methodically down the field. A couple of crosser routes, certainly a couple other larger throws. But you mentioned 320 yards. His long of the day was 32. So like we
Love it.
mentioned, everything is in front of them. Laurier's not allowing anything over the top, but Desjardins and his growth that we've seen from this year is just, hey, you're going to play hold coverage. I'm going to throw it out to the field side where that gap is in between the corner and the half here. You're going to play cut coverage, meaning the corner's down and the half is up. Here's a quick slant over to Olivier Cool or to Guillaume Cochon or Matthew Roy coming out of the backfield. Here's a little something for you. So they were just constantly giving what Laurier they were constantly taking what Laurier was giving them. And I think that and a piece of it, obviously, I don't want to take anything away from Jesse Wilkins. He was playing unbelievable football. But when 70% of all the passes are going boundary side and he's the will linebacker, of course he's going to come over there and make tackles. He's a hell of a tackler to begin with. So really saw Laval try to get Laurier and that defensive secondary off their game, get a little bit more attention away from Olivier Cool so those big shots could start happening. And Laurier just didn't bite on it. Malik Cote came down constantly making solid tackles, and they gave them little smaller chunk plays and kept them out of the end zone.
Well, and that's how Malik and Wilkins can combine for 24 tackles between the two of them. Gorsic adding in six as well. And I love just after the game, we're on the field and, just kind of giving our words to the Laurier folks after the season. I remember one point he just kind of like jogs by us, pats us on the back as he goes. He's like, "Hey, we gave it our all," right? Which again, just the maturity for such a young man being on this high of stages. What again I think was helpful for Laval, it comes back to that defense though, because if Laurier did what we'd been seeing them doing all year long, Laval can't just do that. They can't just chunk it down the field. They can't just say, "Hey, look, we'll win it on the foot of our kicker and our great defense, and let's just chew up clock and just whatever. We'll end drives and threes as long as we took 10 minutes in doing so." You can't do that if Laurier is doing the things that we've seen them do all year long offensively. And we read off the numbers already for Elgersma, talked about what they did in the backfield. It's remarkable to see only 4 attempts by Tanner Nelms on the ground game, and four for Elgersma. You know, all those were situations in which he was trying to just save some yards. They might have done one QB draw, but the big thing for them on the day is number one, Ray and Thorne back in the game for them, who we hadn't seen all playoffs. But Ethan Jordan, man, number four, give me more. Ethan Jordan, 11 receptions, 179 yards, doesn't get into the end zone. The 2 touchdowns go to Ryan Hughes, Mr. Mr. Playoffs, and Jackson Stebbings. For Ethan Jordan, what's so ridiculous, and there was a couple bad drops in there as well. There's the drop that freaked everyone on the Laurier side out, but huge shout, and I'll leave it to you to break it down. That was an incredible call by the official in getting it right, calling it a incomplete pass. And I'm so happy that the call was made right. Obviously, I would have loved to have been a reception, but it wasn't a reception, and the official got it right. So I'm just happy we don't leave this game being like, "Oh my God, how did that happen? How did this, that, and the third?" But so that one I don't put on to Jordan. That was a tough one. But maybe two other plays where he had a catchable ball where him and Elgersma weren't perfectly in rhythm. And you just look at a couple of those plays and think, number one, as you were highlighting, he reels in one or two more of those, and he's tipping the scale at over 200 yards. And on top of that, that might just have been, again, through all these things we're saying that Laval did on the day with that defense just coming to play, that offense just being able to just take what the defense gives them, chunk it down the field, chew up clock, all these types of things. And Laurier making some mistakes, including fumbling the ball 4 times, losing it 3. I'm by no means am I putting this on Jordan, not at all. But you think about the fact that they came so close on a couple of these big plays to him, man, that might, among some of the other mistakes, for them to still make the plays and be that close. I mean, a game of inches, as they say, but what a day for Ethan Jordan.
Most definitely. Anytime you have 11 catches for 179 yards, it's a great day for sure. But to do that in a national championship, I mean, that's a huge credit to him. What we saw a lot of it, one of the best routes that you can do, especially if you want to do a deep route to beat man coverage, is these corner routes. Because as a defensive back, you're watching this receiver, and if you've got a receiver who runs a route really well and you break that off going into the corner, you need to have great speed as a defensive back in order to catch up with them. And these DBs from Laval are the real deal. Obviously, a guy like Jordan Lassard, who's an all-Canadian for a reason here. But what we saw from Taylor Elgersma, and they connected on this a couple of times, but they also missed on it, I think, a few more times, is that when you're running a corner route, it's like a 45-degree angle towards the corner of the end zone, which is why it's called that. But when Taylor's throwing the ball, he's throwing it flatter. So he's creating more of a gap between the defender and the wide receiver, meaning that corner route almost starts to look like a deep out route, while you have a guy like a Ethan Jordan that has the ability to course correct and find the ball. And that's where some of those big plays were happening, because once he does that, as Ethan Jordan is running this route, this DB now recognizes, oh, this is a corner route. I just have to run a corner with him. And when he without showing it, breaks off that corner route into something of an out route, now suddenly that's something that the DB is not prepared for. And even if you've got great abilities here to read this and react, you've got like a second while that ball is in the air for you to recognize that he's broken off a little bit to try to break down on that. And that's why Taylor's throwing those balls. But unfortunately, a couple of them were just a little too flat for his guys. They weren't able to catch them. And then that one that was an incompletion, hell of a call by the official. I believe his name is Brian Grieg, the field judge that was there. It happened right in front of him. The what had happened was Ethan Jordan makes the catch while it's in the air. When he hits the ground, the ball bobbles. You can see his hands move. You can see that ball moves. He then grabs it after that and catches it. But because of that ground movement, because he bobbled the ball when he hit the ground, that's an incomplete pass. We had a chance to speak with CFL officials who were there watching the game. They confirmed it to us. I spoke to the other officials there. Like, that was the right call to make. And in such a tight game with all of that happening in front of him, for that field judge to make that call, that was a fantastic call by him. So we don't oftentimes get a chance to shout out great officiating, but we saw great officiating in this game here for sure. But to see a guy like Ethan Jordan really go off, obviously such a credit to him. The way that we're seeing a lot of these plays here, once again, when you have that chemistry between quarterback and receivers, like Elgersma does with his receivers here, you're able to do things like that flattened out corner route that I was just explaining, and have your guys recognize and be able to readjust to that. But there's so much pressure in your face, there's a lot of times where Taylor's throwing up a ball, and like I said, it's a little bit too far for his guy to catch, or he throws up a ball and it's a little bit too fast, or it's too far behind some of his guys. So they were just off just a little bit here or there. But even with those mistakes, like you mentioned, you only lose this game by 5 points. You're in it the entire time.
Which I don't know from the Laurier standpoint, does that make it hurt more? How you deal with that? Another thing we got to give Laval such a shout out for was how they covered on their special teams. Tayshaun Jackson has 7 punt returns, only for 60 yards. They didn't kick to him, leaving that to Ethan Jordan to return, but he only gets 30 yards on his 2 returns. Though I was stand next to you on the opening kickoff of Laval, being like, you want to make a statement, kick it to 23 and just go get him. That would be pretty badass, to say the least. Tom, I think we got to talk about the last drive for Laurier, not the true last drive where they tried a little bit of the schoolyard BS to make their way down after the missed field goal by Forteza, but the one in which they're starting it. There's 2 minutes 31 seconds left on the game, and they're starting on their own 19 after, again, a phenomenal job by that Laval team. Maybe that was one of the ones where, no, Laurier got pushed back on a kickoff. There was no penalties on that, but a great job by the Laval special teams. Pins Laurier on their 12. They rush it to Nelms on the first one. They pick up 6. 2nd and 4. Elgersma gets sacked and loses 5 again. Shout out by Nathan Charon on the sack there. And on 3rd and 9, with less than a minute to go, they opt to punt the ball.
Mm-hmm.
Laval gets it on their 54. And though it ends up being a missed Forteza field goal, how crazy would that have been if Tayshaun Jackson returned that for a touchdown? That would have been, I don't know what my soul would have left my body. But it leads to Laurier getting the ball back with 14 seconds. And aside from a bit of entertainment, nothing manifests from it. That drive, and specifically the decision on a 3rd and 9 from your own 20, less than a minute to go, you're down the 3 points. You're down the 5 points. I hate to nitpick on it, and I don't even know if I'm nitpicking on it, because it's so easy to just play the results. You were pretty bullish right away, being like, yeah, you kicked the ball though.
Yeah, well, first and foremost, before we get to that, you mentioned it would have been crazy for Tayshaun Jackson to take this back to the house on a missed field goal. The moment that he gets tackled after that, you lean over to me, kind of chuckingly go, well, you can do that against Guelph. You can't do that against friggin' Laval. What the hell?
Hey, man, if they lose to Guelph in that game, maybe they're better prepared to deal with Laval. Who knows?
Oh, goodness. But no, to go into that, the issue that I had in this, and I'll explain this a little bit as we go. But first, my issue is on that play where Taylor gets sacked. It's a rollout play because he's trying to get out and around the pressure that's there. There's nobody who's really open. You can see him, obviously struggle with the ball. He's trying to get a guy off of him, and then he ultimately gets sacked. Like, in that scenario, you cannot get sacked. If worst case scenario, what you do, like, you're rolling out already, you're already out of the pocket, you throw that friggin' ball away, use that cannon of your arm, throw it out of the stadium if you have to. Now, if it's 3rd and 3 or 3rd and 4, way easier to call that. On 3rd and 8 or 3rd and 9, you don't have a lot of play calls for that. a lot of the deep balls that have been thrown here have been deep corner routes. Laval is going to be playing that no matter what. You're uh they've been getting a lot of pressure on you already. And if you get sacked and you're on your own 12-yard line and you give them the ball, the game is all 100% over. At least if you kick the ball away, your defense has been playing great. In the second half, they did force a couple of 2-and-outs for the Laval defense. Rely on your guys, try to get that stop, and then to go again there. Obviously, hindsight is 2020, and should you have taken it? Most definitely. But in that, and there was a couple of spots in this, and I think going into the end of or close to the end of the first half, and obviously near the end of the game, where Taylor's playing second down as if he knows that I'm going to have the ball on third. Where I think it was like a minute or so left, maybe a little bit more in the first half, and Taylor finds, I think it was he finds a receiver over the middle and they only gain about 6 yards. So it's 3rd and 3 or 3rd and 4. And he's going like, no, we're going for this. And then the decision is made and they punt the ball away instead. And obviously you can see him pretty heated because he's an emotional dude and he was heated on that sideline pretty much the entire game. But it seemed the same way in this where he in my opinion, you shouldn't have taken the sack no matter what, but he takes the sack and then he's like, okay, let's huddle up. Like we're gonna get this on third down again, where he's just assuming, okay, I have this ball. But lines of communication are crossed. I don't know if something is said to him or if he just goes into that being like, I'm gonna have the ball no matter what. I wonder if his play call or his decision making would be different if he knew, hey, if I don't get this first down, we're punting the ball instead. So, not to say like I'm not calling anybody out from that Laurier coaching staff by any means. Like I mentioned, when that happened, I was in favor for kicking the ball away. Your defense have been playing well. Try to get a stop and just do not let them score a touchdown to really put this game out of reach. But yeah, that last real drive that they had, that was all kinds of frustrating.
It was tough. And, we were talking with some people, and a lot of folks there didn't really take to it. I was very surprised when he came off the field there. And hey, look, I'm not going to even sniff from a coaching standpoint anything near that type of level. So I'm in no position to be able to judge. It certainly caught us by surprise on that one. I mean, at the end of the day, it's fitting that Laval's defense was the thing that really shut the door for them to be able to put this one to bed. Tom, I mean, just looking at the numbers, we've obviously talked around it, but just looking at a game where Laval puts up 455 yards of offense and Laurier only gets 296, I don't know if Laurier had been held to under 300 yards of offense this whole season. I would be hard pressed to imagine that had happened. Just crossed the century mark on the ground and only with a 246 in the air. We already mentioned the fumbles and the turnovers, the sacks, the time of possession. Penalties pretty much chalk, a few more racking up for the Laval Rouge. But other than that, I don't have a heck of a lot left on this one. Again, shout out to Laval. It was a clinic they put on defensively. And for Laurier, man, to be that close, and just know that they obviously everyone knows that this game could have flipped the other way with a few other bounces. Laval just did feel like the team that, as you would highlight coming into this game, just had been there a heck of a lot more. And you highlight that first big sack that they got on, I think it might have been Laurier's first drive.
Mm-hmm.
It felt like for a bit, Laurier was kind of waiting around to be able to say, like, who's going to be the one? And that's a classic coach speak thing. Who's going to be the guy to set the tone? Is it going to be a big hit? Are we going to bust a big run? Is someone going to get a pancake block to really set the tone? Big reception, all those types of things. Laval made their statement on the first drive with their defense, the thing that they had been known for going into this one, and Laurier just felt like they were waiting around for that punch for, I guess it was the Tayshaun Jackson draw play, but even there, that felt like, okay, good, you got a spark going here, but Laval had just taken oftentimes the person who takes the first punch has the advantage in the fight, and that was Laval in this one. Tom, what else do you got from this matchup?
Well, I mean, when you look at a Laurier squad that, like we mentioned, has scored in 3 games 128 points, and 88 of those 128 in the first half. And then to look at this and say, Laurier didn't get a first down until the 3rd or 4th drive. Like they had
Right.
2 or 3 2-and-outs to begin the game. And then even when they finally get a touchdown, Laval has scored either through 3 field goals and a safety, but they have 11 points already. and then you score a touchdown, and obviously 7 points gets you racked up a whole lot faster than 3 and 2 do. But this was still such a dominating performance by this Laval defense. I mean, when you look at how well they were able to play against the nation's number one offense, that's the crazy thing. It's not like these guys are going up against a team that was struggling offensively. This is the number one offense, the Heck Crichton winner as a quarterback, and you're able to shut them down so effectively in this one. The one thing that I do want to call out for the Laurier defense, because while yes, Laval did get 22 points. Four of those, like you mentioned, are safeties that are, well, 4 points are safeties coming from the Laurier offense because they're pinned deep and they don't allow a single touchdown. The thing that I thought that was the most impressive that I needed to call out here, Laval drives the field and they kick a field goal near the end of the first half and to make it 14-7. Laurier gets the ball back. The very first play, Tayshaun Jackson fumbles the ball and Laval gets the ball back. Laurier forces a 2-and-out to make sure that they don't gain a first down and they have to force to kick another field goal. If they let a touchdown happen in that scenario, that game is done by before halftime. Laurier's defense, despite having dealt with an entire drive and having one play off, because immediately after the field goal is kicked, the offense comes out and then they fumble. They come right back. They stop them twice and they force another field goal. I thought that was a defining moment in that game for the Laurier defense that I wanted to make sure that I got in there. But the other side of this, to finish off with the Laval defense, I know I'm bouncing all over the place here, and I'm sorry, partner, but I've seen, I know you're not online on social media. There's a lot of people who had a lot of things to say about this Laurier offense and this Laurier team because A, they're winning, and B, they talk when they win. And nobody loves to shut people up more than people who talk when they win. But they're calling things out like, oh, Taylor Elgersma fumbled the ball a lot, and Tayshaun Jackson, Raiden Thorne, whatever. Those aren't just random, oh, I got hit a little hard and the ball popped out. That Laval defense was so well coached and well prepared. All of those hits, it's either the shoulder going directly where the ball is or guys who are punching the ball out as they make contact. That's not just something you do. You are coached. That's drills. That's constant work that you're focusing on this. And once again, shout out to this legendary coaching staff, led by the most legendary and winningest coach in USports history in Coach Glenn Constantine. When you watch this defense and you really understand the game, when you understand the steps they're being made, linebackers and how they're reading, how guys are form tackling, how many missed tackles did we see by the Laval defense? Rarely, if any.
Missed
As soon as they
tackles.
got hands on, it was tackled immediately. This was a well-coached team from top to bottom, and that defense just played their best game against the best offense they were going to see.
Well, I guess it's like the saying goes, offense sells tickets and defense wins championships. You highlight the 2-and-out by the Laurier defense. Great job by you. And also to highlight Wilkins coming up with let's say the fumble recovery. I thought it was an interception. I thought the ball kind of bounced around, but then when we saw him after the game and he's got the hand clubbed up, not full club, but like a pretty good like soft cast going there. I'm like, brother, how did you reel that ball in? So another just major play that wanted to make sure that we noted. But yeah, Tom, that's your Vanier Cup. Man, oh man, with how we started the episode and talking about whatever the spat was between Taylor and some of those guys, I don't mean to stoke that fire at all, but three RSEQ champions raising up the Vanier Cup and all of them in Ontario.
Oof.
Tom, I gotta say, I don't love it. I don't love it. It hurts a little bit, but that's why we know we have a great product on the field and why we keep doing the thing that we do to try to support it and give it a platform. Tom, final thoughts on the Vanier Cup and even more so the 2024 U Sports football season.
The more and more that you and I are covering, the more years that we're starting to rack up as we cover these seasons, the more I am convinced that the quality on the field is getting better and better and better. We're starting to see more of these individual training outlets or people who are focused on training in the offseason, and that is specifically, in my opinion, I think the quarterback play is really coming along here across the league and how things are going, which I just love to see. And I hope more and more people are getting a sense to get out to these games because these are some of the best athletes that we have in Canada in general going through this. In this game in particular, we mentioned it but my goodness, what an incredible defensive showcase for any high school or any other person who's a defensive minded guy. Watching this game was, I'm sure, an outstanding game to watch. Obviously, we would have loved to see a little bit more scoring, a little bit more of that back and forth action here, but this was a fantastic game. This was a showcase of why Laval is so great, not only because of the great players that they have, but the phenomenal coaches, the experience that coaching staff brings. I mean, one of the coaches that were on there was highlighted on the CBC Live is Anthony Auclair, who was a Super Bowl champion, not Grey Cup, Super Bowl champion with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers back in 2020, and Tom Brady. So having a guy like that who's got experience in winning championships at the very highest of levels in the football world, that helps a lot. And then seeing a guy like Coach Glenn Constantine, who has won so many championships, and it was called out on Twitter, and I want to call it out here as well. Since Coach Constantine took over as head coach in 2003, he has not had a single recruiting class that has not won at least one Vanier Cup. Majority of almost all of them have at least two. Every single recruiting class that he's brought into Laval since he's been the head coach has won at least one national championship. If that's not the greatest of all time as a coach, I don't know what is.
Like, just picture that as the recruiting pitch. Come play for me, and my track record shows you'll win a Vanier Cup.
Mm-hmm.
Tom, that's not only a wrap on the 2024 season, but as we've been talking about, that is a wrap on the first quarter of this century that we have to now look back on the greatness of individuals like Coach Glenn Constantine, nearly doing it for every year since 2000, as he said, taking the helm at 2003, and we know what some of our guys in the OUA have been doing for that time. So you can certainly look forward to some of the content we have coming your way in that realm of things as we now take time to reflect not only on this season, but on the great football that's been played over the years, over the decades, really for the span of pretty well almost our entire lifetimes. Obviously, we're going to do our exit meetings, look at all these teams, how they fared on the year, and take a little peek into next year with how they're looking. We're planning some of the content that we have coming your way. Tom, I think I already threw it to you, but I just feel like because it's the last one we have for a bit, I'm going to say again, final thoughts on the 2024 season.
Oh, goodness. Once again, going into this last week, excited because it's the Vanier Cup, it's the national championship, it's the best of the best, but also disheartened because now our beautiful USports season has come to an end again. We saw some unbelievable games throughout, not just the OUA, but across the country as well, and how well people are playing and how well this game is just growing in general here. We appreciate everybody tuning into us, coming up to us every single game that we do something. We even had a couple of CFL scouts and like GMs come up to us at the game saying, hey, we listen to you guys when we're going to go watch a game because we want to see who the guys are to watch, which once again, that just kind of blows my mind, how well we're doing our thing and how well we're getting out there. So thank you once again to everybody who listens to us, who comes out to say hi to us. A special, I know we already said it, but a special, unbelievable shout out to you, Peter Bierce, and not only being an outstanding person and an outstanding fan, but to make up your own at the 55 swag and wear it to the Vanier Cup 2 years in a row. Can't thank you enough for that, my man. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you to everybody else who listens to us. You are all incredible, and we appreciate you.
Tom, as always, I couldn't top that if I tried. So I can't say exactly when you'll be hearing from us, but we'll be right here for you, right here at the 55.